Hi, I'm Aryeh. I'm here with my good friend Ali. Ali has lived in Burlington for the past 20 years, and he is an Iranian man, born in Iran.
Actually born in the United States, but my family is from Iran, but very close, yeah.
Your family is born, your family is still in Iran today?
Yes, they are, yeah.
Well. And for the past 20 years, you've lived in downtown Burlington?
I have actually 25 years. I moved to Vermont in year 2000. Yeah, and at first a couple of months I lived in Montpelier, and then I moved to Burlington. And this has been my place of residence for the last 25 years, 26 years now, and I've lived here, moved to other places, but then I've come back. So yeah, about 26 years now.
Amazing. And from my understanding, we met, first of all, let's give people some background of where we met. There was a anti-war protest, anti-Iran war protest, led by the local Palestinian movement in town. And I went by just to see what was going on, and I saw this lone man sitting there, or standing there, with an Iranian flag, an actual original Iranian flag with the lion on it, standing there against 100 or 150 people. And I said, I have to meet this guy. And the rest is history. And since then, we've kind of formed a close bond, even though you're come from a Muslim background, and I'm a Jew, and I consider myself a Zionist, which means I believe in that Israel should just exist. I'm not a far-right extremist, but we've formed this bond, and just would love to hear your experience living in Vermont, your experience in different political communities, and where you started and kind of where you are now.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that the actual event was kind of vague. Who organized that protest? And I knew that was the day where war was going to begin. And I know that from past experience of living here that the socialist group and the Palestinian activist groups were going to organize a rally. And I wanted to give an alternative to what the actual Iranians think. So I think the actual organization that started that was actually called the People for Socialism and Liberation. But you wouldn't be able to tell that because of so many Palestinian flags they have. And it makes it sound like the war or the conflict in Iran has something to do with Palestine. And it doesn't, right? And I think that's why I felt that as an Iranian, and many Iranians, probably the majority of Iranians, see Israel as an ally, see Israel as a friend who's helping Iranians to, liberate from the Islamic Republic that is ruling in Iran. And it's very sad that in Burlington, Vermont, I have to fight so hard to even have the basic of my voice not be heard.
Sure.
Right? I mean, because as I said, it's like just me versus 150, and I was very grateful that you stood with me, and I was just amazed with your support and solidarity after. But yeah, that's a very unfortunate thing. I think that, and this is a great travesty for the Progressive Party, for the socialist movement, for the Palestine activists in Vermont and across the country, that they have chosen the wrong side on this conflict,
And you were very involved with these movements for years.
Yeah, I mean, I moved to Vermont 26 years ago to study with Murray Bookchin, who is one of the main thinkers and person whom Bernie Sanders had a lot of debate with and all so forth. And, I've definitely, you could call me a loyal, Bernie person for many years, and have been let down multiple times. And it's just, it's very unfortunate. Yeah. And I think that what's really unfortunate is the fact that, the Palestine movement, the progressives have stayed so silent about the massacres that have been taking place in Iran, the atrocities.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do as I have family in Iran and I have so many activists that I am in touch with. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing they can do at this point, in my opinion, to redeem what they've done, which is basically ignore the struggle of the Iranian people and, side with the people, basically, in my opinion, siding with the people that are doing the aggression. There is a time to wave the Palestinian flag, and there is a time to keep the Palestinian flag at home. And the Iran war is one of those situations where you are waving the Palestinian flag in my face is triggering, right? Because the Islamic Republic, the regime in Iran, the Ayatollah regime, uses Free Palestine concept as a way of oppressing its own people. And I think it's sad that people who call themselves college students, intellectuals, and activists, they don't see that,
Yeah, I think there's been a trend around town here. Obviously, the Israel-Gaza war was a big travesty for a lot of people involved, both on the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. Right. But the war, the hostages were released. The last body came home. There's a ceasefire, right. But it seems to be that the Palestinian movement is continuing to co-opt issues here in town, right. And almost every event that you go attend, whether it's ICE, whether it's the Iran war, whether it's No King's Day, Palestinian flags are there, prominent and large. And why do you think that is? Where did this come from?
And even
that
as,
makes sense.
If we think about the city council, even as something simple as when we're trying to pass a resolution on recycling, there's the Free Palestine movement there, right? First of all, I have huge concerns because traditionally the Palestine movement has been something that Muslim community has bear the burden of, sure. And has raised the flag for. And one thing that I am outraged by the Palestine movement in Vermont is that they have systematically undermined the voices of Muslim immigrants who live in this state that want to give an alternative point of view. I think, we went to counter a protest that they were holding at UVM, which is, again, I think it's an outrageous that they would hold such an event in a time of there is no actual conflict going on in UVM. And when you approach them and you ask them that, do you think there should be a two-state solution? They're like, no, Israel should not exist, right? So I think that is an absolute travesty and outrage that they would say something like that, right? And what they do is, if you think about it, they're not actually they're not empowering Muslim community to have a voice in this. They're not because the majority of the Muslim community in this state is actually very peaceful. You're not going to see them at city council waving a Palestinian flag. You're not going to see them yelling and shouting at pedestrians and blocking traffic or getting in combat with police. They actually are folks that have moved here and they want to live a normal life and they want to do business. You might actually consider them politically more conservative, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, and then this is a hijacking of the movement by a group of European folks who are college kids and so forth, who are just kind of feeling disempowered. And they actually are, whenever there is a mass group of people, Burlington is a very white state, where there's a large group of people waving the Palestinian flag, wearing keffiyehs and so forth, and inciting people, what it actually does, it doesn't impact them, it impacts the immigrants, the Muslim community that feels marginalized. Because for an average layman, the Palestinian flag symbolizes Islam. But for them, when you approach them, they actually don't talk about Islam. They have no understanding of the religion. They don't know about the history of Palestine or Jerusalem. And that's that's biggest insult I think I have experienced from the Palestinian activists.
And the Palestinian activists here in Vermont, it might not be the same in New York, in Michigan, but the Palestinian activists in Vermont, I can conclude, and you can conclude, that it's overwhelming majority white people who are now telling a brown person, I don't like to use those terms because I believe we're all the same. But here in Burlington, it's a very racially, they like, it's all, a lot about race. So you have white people, a group of white people now telling a brown person, and now you're getting doxxed, harassed by white white people who've converted to Islam.
No, they have not.
No, sorry, not converted to Islam, but just regular white people questioning your mental health, questioning who you are as a person for standing up for your family. Who's being killed in Iran.
And I think, I think this is, as you said, they use this language, and they use this language of American imperialism and Zionism, which is extremely dangerous, because they should not mix Zionism with other isms that they do, because Zionism stands for the recognition of Jewish people having a homeland. And you might have some Zionists that might be, far right, and some Zionists might be moderates, but to blankly dox people, hunt people, get them fired from their jobs for sharing ideas, because I've worked in this state.
Death threats. I mean, city councilors in our town in Burlington have gotten death threats.
That is unacceptable.
For standing up. And they're not right-wing, as people in Burlington would call them, Netanyahu extremists. These are people who believe in Palestinian rights and believe in a two-state solution. Like I do, I believe in Palestinian rights. I also want to recognize there are people out there that have become somewhat Islamophobic and kind of blanket the whole Muslim community as a whole.
I can speak as an Iranian who has had ancestors who are Muslim, who has lived in an Islamic Republic. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in Burlington today to be able to give you an honest opinion about Islam and what it feels like to live in an Islamic Republic. And Iranians are outraged by this word Islamophobia because we are Islam traumatized. We're traumatized by a regime that preaches free Palestine at the same time that is declared jihad on Israel and U.S. and is spending our national resources on these endless conflicts, causing extreme suffering. So for us, we are traumatized by Islam, and we feel that this is unacceptable. I think because, we think of Islam is not an ethnicity, it's a religion. But today in the world, how it is practiced, Islamism and political Islam, has become a political ideology similar to Marxism, right? And I think that people should question the Islamic doctrine, they should question Sharia law, they should be able to stand up and speak about it. And we're not allowed to. Even as a Muslim, as an ex-Muslim, as a recovering Muslim, I am harassed, I am undermined if I try to speak an alternative point of view. And, so one thing is this, if they're going to have that type of point of view, they should not be waving the flag of, liberation of immigrants. They should not be waving that flag because they are systematically undermining the immigrants in this community.
I kind of just want to go back to Islamophobia. So from my understanding, the definition of Islamophobia is to single out all Muslims as a group and say, you're all bad, and we need to create laws potentially that discriminate against them. In my book, I think that's not okay. Actually, I know it's not okay. I think potentially you would not be okay with that as well.
I mean, I don't know about that. I didn't come in this conversation thinking about that word.
Okay, cool.
I personally don't like the word Islamophobia. I would not use it because it somehow creates this concept that Islam is a person's ethnicity. I am not a Muslim, I'm Persian, I'm Iranian. Some other person is an Iraqi, or they're even Palestinian. So I think Islam is a religion, but the way it is practiced today around the world, in the United States and Canada and Europe, and inside Islamic countries, it has become a political ideology, and that needs to be acknowledged. Right? You know, I have met Jewish folks who are secular, who are Orthodox. Some don't even believe in the state of Israel. Some do believe. There is diversity in that voice. You know, today, if you're a Christian, you're an American Christian, you're a Mormon, you're a Baptist. There's huge diversity there. Nobody thinks that the global Christian, you know, crusade, they're not living in that mindset. But in Islam, globalism, or, you know, globalizing the Intifada is a common thing. And, you know, there is huge human rights violation that is taking place in places like Afghanistan, Iran, which is where we are today, and in different countries around the world, even in the United States and in Canada. So I think that it is important for any rational secular person who is coming from an Islamic root to be able to question Islam, to stand up to Sharia law, to stand up to orthodoxy of Islam and the dangers of its it poses. So I think that you know, I think that is, to me, where, you know, where I am. You know, yes, there are people who are Muslim who practice the religion peacefully, but again, that is not, you know, it's not like, you know, a universal thing, you know. Yeah.
Would you say that this is one of the largest issues facing America?
Islam?
I wouldn't label it Islam, but potentially radical elements within.
Well, I think what I can speak about Burlington.
Okay.
I think what is endangering Burlington is people becoming ideologues, right? Where, you know, you have someone like Bernie Sanders, who is a Marxist, right, who travels the country and speaks as though he's like a clergy person, like an Ayatollah. Right? He goes around the country, preaches the end of oligarchy, to fight, you know, for the oppressed people, yet he lives like an oligarch. He's got multiple homes, millions of dollars, and he has completely neglected what's going on in Burlington and in Vermont.
I would love to ask Bernie actually what he thinks of Burlington, Vermont, right. and I think it would be a great answer because, or a great question to ask him because. Although he's no longer the mayor, a lot of the policies that were adopted in Burlington mimic his policies. I think, at least.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, so I think this is, you know, like, I think that the kids or the students and the people who are out there, they're not necessarily waking up and saying, oh, you know, I'm just going to be an Islamist or I'm going to be a Marxist, but they look at the trends and they look at the people who set the trends. And in our mind, in the United States right now, Bernie stands for liberation of the oppressed. Well, he preaches ideology, right? So that ideology that he's preaching in practice does not translate to what's going on. And I think in a very smaller context, he is a kind of our Ayatollah. He's like the guy who travels in different locations, gives out sermons, collects some donations, but when he comes home, he doesn't do anything. And I think that's the danger. You know, it's not radicalization, because sometimes you can have people who are motivated to do change and do revolutionary things to do change, and I think we should never undermine that ability for people to stand up. But right now, we live in a situation where, you know, when I'm going to the city council meeting,
sure,
to talk about recycling, what does this have to do with Free Palestine movement? So it's the mixture. When people have become ideologically brainwashed, they see no other path forward, and they follow demagoguery, right? And then there is nothing that can get done in Burlington without a 100 to 500 people protesting something. So we have reached the point where civil society and civic duty has been replaced by mob justice,
mentality,
right?
yeah.
Right. You know. So and then I think.
And now, I mean, it's a complete fear-based society because the city councilors, regardless of whether they're on the left or they're on the right, they're deeply afraid.
Right.
They're deeply afraid because we're living in a modern Charlie Kirk society where Charlie was shot for speaking, what was on his mind,
right.
regardless of whether you agreed with him or not. And we see that anger now in city council meetings, both on the left, on the right, and it's like the left is almost like, and the right, they're ping-ponging.
There's haven't seen much of the right. I have only seen the far left and the farthest of the left.
At least here in Burlington.
And then maybe there will be some like Democrats left in the middle. I don't think there is an actual right in Vermont, in Burlington, but there might be one. I have never seen it in the city council.
Sure,
it's very much polarized towards the thing is this, intimidation. Like when I'm going to a city council meeting and there's 100 people, 50 people wearing keffiyehs, well, that's very intimidating.
Totally.
We know what, and they're like, oh no, we're doing this for the liberation of Palestine. But the thing is that none of these folks are Palestinian. Maybe one or two are. None of these people are Syrian, Algerian, Iraqis, Iranis. They are all from Vermont, most of them, right? So there
are plenty of Jewish people connected to the conflict.
And the thing is this: when I see, as a person, as an ex-Muslim, as a recovering Muslim person, I see someone wearing the keffiyeh, I am triggered to go back to the time when the Ayatollah people and the Islamic Republic people, the people that have done the most injustice, have most killing and torture, were the ones wearing the keffiyeh.
Wow.
Those are the people that I'm reminded of.
Wow.
Right?
So when you see our city councilors, it's their city councilors who are wearing the keffiyehs. It's not only the people who are attending.
So they're like, they're like, okay, you guys are, first of all, you guys are not Muslim. You're not Middle Eastern of any ethnicity. And when I go into a situation like that, I feel extremely intimidated because that reminds me of the fear of the terror I felt as a kid, as a person who had to flee the country.
Sorry you have to deal with that.
I am not saying that symbol is an evil one,
sure.
But there is countless examples of severe human rights violation that has been done to people of the Middle East with people who have been wearing the keffiyeh. And have done hijacking, have done bombings, have done massacres, have, coup d'etats.
The Palestinian, the first speech I said at City Council in 2021, I got up there and I said the keffiyeh represents a people who till this day continue to pay suicide bombers' families in perpetuity after they blow themselves up in discotheques and kill children and maim families. And this is not by Hamas. This is not by the radicals of the Palestinian movement. This is by the PLO themselves. The PLO are naming parks after suicide bombers. And this is something that I brought up. And it's not. I'm not making a blanket statement saying that all Palestinians are bad. And there are plenty of good Palestinians out there.
I think that the important thing is this. People should have the right to wave the Palestinian flag. People have the right to wear the keffiyeh. What happens is that when you are in a small community like Vermont, where it's homogenized, mostly ethnically white folks, that is extremely triggering, And I think that robbing a group of people, robbing Muslim immigrants, of their ability to advocate and talk about Palestine is a severe injustice, right? So they have all their, and when there was, a hate shooting that took place, I spoke up. I was present. I put my life at risk to go
for the Palestinian kids who were shot.
So
you stood on the side of those kids, of course, as we should as a community.
And I think that understanding the nuances. When you have a kid who is from rural Vermont who doesn't know anything about Israel and Palestine, and you throw him in this type of movement, and you give him a keffiyeh, and he feels empowered, and he wants to go on the street and start waving the flag. The people who are organizers of this movement don't understand the amount of racial and ethnic hatred that they're triggering.
I'm pretty sure the organizers of the movement understand what they're doing.
I'm going to assume that, right?
For sure. These people are highly intelligent.
And I think that when there is an injustice taking place, I was, as I said, for 20 years or so, I have been an avid advocate for the human rights, dignity of Muslim immigrants, Palestinians in this town. And when there is an injustice taking place, I have, stood and recorded as a videographer. I have never in my entire life wore the keffiyeh, because I know from me growing up, from my childhood, that is a very specific symbol reserved for people who are in this, in this level of Islam and understanding
resistance. That's
and I think for me, I have never
just so for people to understand, because I think there's a lot of ignorance in Vermont, right? That's a big part of the problem.
Right.
Is that people aren't foreign policy experts. They didn't have. A lot of them haven't had even undergraduate education, postgraduate education, having real discussions with both Muslims and Jews to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interject. This movement used to be called Vermonters for Peace and Just Israel and Palestine, and then it gradually moved.
I never knew that.
It gradually moved into a point where it's just now. As we have had conversation with some unfortunately not very well-informed college kids, that it's just Palestine. And then they're not even acknowledging
two Jewish kids at the rally, I have it on video, were denying that Israel ever existed. Historically, today,
right.
It making actually completely revisionist history.
Yeah, and it looks like, we got about 5 minutes.
Okay,
but yeah, so I think this is an important conversation that needs to happen. I wanted to just say that as an Iranian, I feel outraged that the progressives, the Social Democrats, the PSL, and the Palestine group have completely ignored what is happening in Iran and are not standing on the side of the Iranian people, but they're standing on the side of the Islamic Republic. And they need to acknowledge that. They need to acknowledge that in this conflict, the Iranian people are in solidarity with the state of Israel and with the Israelis. And I think this binary logic that they have, evil versus good, is absolutely detrimental. Because there is, this is not the world we live in. So, and I think that this is an injustice, and hopefully there will be some shifts in politics. And I didn't label all the political groups in this city, because there are some people that are rational, and they're like, we cannot just destroy Israel and just replace the Palestine. What's going to happen? I mean, it's going to be just absolutely insanity. But sorry.
So just kind of like want to finish up with something and really the root cause of this and really what's happening. And a lot of this rhetoric that we're seeing now is actually just blanket anti-Semitic, just Jew hate, bigotry, openly. And unfortunately, that bigotry has now permeated into our cities, city institutions, City Hall, a lot of different institutions here in town. And I'd like to just bring up briefly kind of what happened to me in town here, specifically by a security guard who worked at City Hall, for months at the entrance of City Hall wearing a keffiyeh, as you mentioned, something triggering for you. And he sent me messages on Facebook saying, why am I coming to City Hall trying to protest city councilors' ability to protest genocide when I could be killing brown kids myself, because that's my God-given birthright. And I went to the city and I went to the mayor asking for help multiple times, and I went to the city councilors multiple times, saying I was harassed by someone who worked at the city and they did nothing. And so a lot of why I have kind of begun to stand up, because I realized that it's not just me who has been harmed in the city. There are people like you, many other people here who don't have a voice in the city. There's no free speech here, I feel like, or if there is, you are retaliated against. Thank you so much for standing with me, and we'll continue our journey together.
Thank you so much, Aryeh. Yeah, thank you.